Hi, this is Laura Bomey. Welcome to week 2 of our Elements of Learning Experience Design. This video will help you understand the materials for week 2. And our topics this week are user needs analysis, learning objectives and outcomes, human-centered design and empathetic thinking, and then there'll be an overview of our week 2 activities, which will be a very scaled down needs analysis and some practice doing learning objectives and something called personas. And so let's jump right in. Just a reminder of our design thinking process, where we have been and where we're going. So last week we spent time on developing your problem under stage 1 and phase 1, which are what's called naming and framing. So throughout this course we will be continuing to work on the problem statement. Do not be worried if you're not completely set on it yet. The work that we're doing just will give you practice, so do your best on the problem you've identified and moving forward. This week we'll spend a lot of time on what's called human-centered design and user analysis, so that we can really understand our end users' needs and their requirements as we work through our problem. And so that is considered the stage 2 perspectives. So with that, user needs analysis essentially is, as a learning experience designer, you can work to address your complex problem. It could be any number of things, a training, it could be a product, it could be a technology, but you need to understand the problems that your end users are facing, and therefore that is what we're really going to be focusing on this week. So a user needs analysis typically includes 3 phases. Again, we're doing a very scaled down version of this. All the things that we pretty much do in this course are foundational elements to help you get familiar, but a lot of these are in fact courses all unto themselves, especially user needs analysis. And you'll also hear it referred to as needs assessment. But here are the common 3 phases: the preparation phase, the investigation phase, and the decision phase. So the preparation phase is choosing your stakeholders and understanding their problems or needs and identifying just certain kinds of criteria and gathering information. So during this week, your brief and kind of user needs analysis assignment, you're going to be asked to talk to 2 to 3 people who are users related to your problem or your design challenge. And don't worry too much. It's not a fully in-depth research project. It's just a quick chat with these folks to get some ideas about their needs and requirements or their thoughts about your design challenge. So there's the preparation phase, the investigation phase. Basically, you're looking at what is the present situation, what is the system or process, how does it work, what are the problems, and then what possible alternatives might exist for you to consider. And we'll be getting into more of that maybe later as we get into the ideation and prototyping phases of our design thinking part of this course. But if you're just thinking through user needs analysis and asking questions, these are some things that will help you have those conversations with the people you interview. And then ultimately the decision phase. This is when you flesh out a proposed system, design, product, or service. So as you're talking to people, again, this is a much longer process than what we're going to be doing this week, but you can ask them, what do they think the solution is? What kinds of decisions do they anticipate needing to be made, and so on. So that's what this user needs analysis piece kind of looks like. And then the next part of your assignment will be to identify, as it relates to your problem statement and design challenge, learning outcomes and objectives. And the most common way of doing this is really looking at Bloom's taxonomy, which are these 6 levels of learning, from knowledge all the way to evaluation. And the most simplistic, if you will, types of learning outcomes start at the knowledge phase. So describing, identifying, defining, those are the kinds of things that start there, all the way up to evaluation, where you're doing more complex and critical thinking, such as critiquing or comparing or making judgments. And so effective learning objectives do use action verbs, and it should describe what your student should do at the end of the learning. As a result of this learning, the learner should be able to do do X, Y, and Z. So make them very action-oriented. Things that are not learning outcomes are things that just say you will gain knowledge about or you will understand this. Those are not learning outcomes. They're not actually something that someone could demonstrate to you. So hopefully that helps, and probably many of you have already had this type of lesson, but it is important that when you're creating learning objectives that you make them actionable. And so, as I mentioned, you'll do your user needs analysis related to your problem statement. You'll also come up with some learning outcomes or objectives related to that. And then lastly, you're going to really, throughout the work you do this week, think about human-centered design and empathetic thinking. So one of the unique elements that is making learning experience design popular is the idea of how user-centered it actually is, really taking an empathic or empathetic perspective about what the user's needs rather than just imparting content or knowledge. You're just trying to understand, what do the users want to do? What problems do they want to solve? And so a lot of this human-centered design and empathetic thinking is around observation, research, qualitative discussions with your end users. So the typical process steps include observing, collecting data, reflecting and analyzing, brainstorming, and prototyping. And again, these are all very big processes, and we're just going to be giving you some practice with understanding these principles. Your assignments, as I've mentioned throughout this video, you have an individual assignment to conduct a brief user needs analysis, talking to 2 to 3 people, identifying learning objectives and outcomes, and developing what are called user personas. So user personas are essentially another way of saying an archetype. So an archetype would be if you're doing some form of, let's say, a new marketing of a product, then you might have a persona of a marketing person. And if that product then has to be developed, you might have a persona that might be an IT person. So you're going to develop some user personas, 3 user personas this week that are related to your design challenge. And there are some examples in the assignment of how you might go about doing this, but try to keep in mind that a persona is just kind of a character type or an archetype of the end users that you anticipate working with your design challenge. And then you'll take that same individual assignment, share it with your small group. You'll see this pattern repeat throughout the course, and then you'll get feedback from your group members, and you will provide feedback on, again, the user needs analysis, the learning objectives, and the personas. And all of this is intended to give refinement to the work that you're doing. And then lastly, there's a whole class discussion where you're going to be further examining human-centered design and empathetic thinking and their impacts on learning and your abilities and future as a learning experience designer. And then lastly, just a quick summary. A reminder of the intersection of learning sciences, designerly ways of knowing, instructional design, and design thinking. And we're living kind of in the middle of this LXD and really spending time on this focus on human and user-centered design this week. So you'll be reviewing all the resources that you're provided and creating this user needs analysis, sharing with your peers, and then reflecting on the learning related to empathetic thinking and human-centered design. Thank you very much.